Perfect. Excellent. Well, thanks everyone for joining. I'm very excited to have Dr. Deb here, who's been practicing for over 20 years, which doesn't seem possible, but there we go. She's been doing this for over 20 years now. And again, what I really liked about, if any of you saw one of her notes was, that she wants to practice healthcare, not sick care. And certainly talking to so many of the providers at the moment, that's a very good thing to kind of live by. Also, she's had many years experience with the fit test and is also a graduate of FMU, the Functional Medicine University, which again, KBMO and have worked very closely with them as well. And so again, if any of those alum are here, we welcome and love to work with you guys as well. So more importantly, she's going to go through some of her experiences of working with a fit test, and then again, some of her some great case studies and how she treats people. And again, what I wanted to do is, again, this is more of a, as I say, these sessions more like I would describe as friends and family, on the basis what you've got is, very similar like people as yourselves who are practicing, juggling real life and their practice at the same time, just as I am in terms of KBMO, in terms of family businesses. So again, without further ado, I want to hand you over to Dr. Deb, and we'll go through this presentation. Over to you, Dr. Deb.
Thanks, James. Hey, everyone. How's everyone doing today? And I'm thankful for you all being on here with me, because we're going to be talking about something that a lot of people don't even think to talk about. And this is super near and dear to my heart. And I'm going to be going through why that is as we go. And if there's some tears, I apologize now. It can tend to be a little bit hard to talk about. But, I'm really excited to be on this webinar so I can shed some light on the topic of, I know you guys can probably figure it out right now, it's food sensitivities, right? Food for thought. We got to think about the things that we're putting in our body, because it really impacts our lives in so many different ways. And as practitioners, it impacts us, and then it impacts our patients. So I think this is something that's really, really important for us to think through, talk through, and recognize as we're trying to figure out what's going on with our patients, what's going on with their guts. And KBMO has been really integral in helping me help my patients better. So I do want to say, if you see on their hashtag Live Like Mitch, this whole presentation and everything I do these days is about really recognizing Mitch is my nephew who we lost 20 years ago. I'm sorry, at 20 years, 2 years ago, to an allergic reaction to dairy that we did not know that he was allergic to, and how it's impacted our family. And I'm going to get into that a little bit more as we move forward. I also want to say that, Live Like Mitch to my family means showing up. I don't even know if I told James this, but about 4 weeks ago, I got hit in the face with a statue, broke my nose, got a concussion, got whiplash, and yet, 5 days later, I showed up in Jacksonville and spoke in front of thousands of people, so that I just showed up, and I would forget my words, which, if I forget my words today, that's why, because I'm still dealing with this concussion. But really, at the end of the day, it's just about showing up and being there. And I think that is super, super, super important. So, just think of that when you're like, oh, I don't know what to do. What you do is you show up and you ask the people that are important to you, and then you can figure it out from there. Okay. So, without further ado, I'm Dr. Deb Schreibman. I live in Woodstock, Georgia. I've been in practice in just over 20 years. I'm a certified occupational therapy assistant. I am a neuromuscular therapist. I'm a chiropractor. I am a certified functional medicine practitioner. I grew up north, and I am living down in this southern area. And my practice is in Kennesaw, Ackworth area. And we love it here, so we're going to stay here. But I do want to just really talk about how I got into chiropractic care and then into functional medicine. And I did that because I had a lot of struggles myself through my life as we went through health struggles like cervical dysplasia, blood pressure issues, blood sugar issues, all kinds of things like that. And I too had food sensitivities. And what was interesting, and actually mine's probably more like a food allergy, and there is a difference between food allergies and food sensitivities, right? food sensitivities and allergies are really defined as adverse reactions that the body is going to have to different foods that we eat, and varying symptoms and discomfort for people, and varying outcomes. And for me, what was interesting was I was actually sitting at dinner one night with my husband, and we opened up this fresh pineapple, and I was like, "Oh my God, honey, how are you even eating this thing?" And he looked at me and he's like, "What's the matter? This is the sweetest pineapple that I have ever eaten." And I thought, "Are you kidding me? My mouth is burning. Everything is going crazy. My throat is itching. Doesn't yours do that?" I just thought it was the acidity of the pineapple. Now, mind you, this is years and years ago, before I even realized that we should be food sensitivity or allergy testing. And he thought I was completely nuts. And I said, "Don't you actually have this every time you eat pineapple?" And he said, "No, I had no idea that I had an allergy to pineapple until I actually did a KBMO test." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, you wouldn't even believe it. Look at this. It's one of my highest allergens or sensitivities." So that is one of the things that was really a huge eye opener for me. So I am go a little bit over some of the sensitivities versus allergy stuff, and then I'm going to tell my personal story. Get out your Kleenex, you might need it too. Food sensitivities are typically less severe. They have generally milder symptoms, but they can also be chronic, much more long term. The response with food sensitivities are typically much more delayed. Symptoms can occur from hours to days after you've consumed that offending food. It's really mediated by IgG antibodies, and symptoms can often be much more subtle than an allergy, right? So you can have digestive issues, you could have constipation, you could have diarrhea, you could have bloating, you could have gas, fatigue. I would get headaches, right? Joint pain, skin conditions, and typically sensitivities are not life threatening, where allergies are typically much, much more critical. They are more severe. They generally are more intense with their symptoms. They can be anaphylaxis and even death, right? So allergies are typically that more immediate response where we have symptoms that occur usually within minutes to even a few hours after consuming that offending food. It's usually mediated by the IgE antibodies, and symptoms can really range from skin issues like rashes, respiratory symptoms, so breathing symptoms like me, that burning mouth and the burning lips and the burning throat, GI issues, cardiovascular issues, eczema, hives, things like that, congestion, nausea, and anaphylaxis. And anaphylaxis, for those of you who don't know, but I know you all know this stuff, is a medical emergency, and it does require immediate intervention. And as one of the things that we learned in my family was that even immediate intervention sometimes isn't enough. So this is a picture of my nephew Mitch. We used to call him Michola as a fun little family name for him. They live down in California, and there's a lot of Spanish there. So my Spanish is so limited that Michola was the name that I was able to call him. And so every time I speak, this is really in loving memory of Mitch. He was born May 8th, and May 9th was really, I'm sorry, July 9th was really when this happened. But July 13th was when Mitch actually passed. And the one, really great thing about this for us was that Mitch was an organ donor, and he actually was able to save 4 people's lives, which is pretty incredible. So what happened was my family and I had been out, and we were visiting my brother, and we were getting ready to go to a really big family party. And then we were headed to Hawaii. And I was in the department store getting an outfit because, of course, my husband forgot his pants for this big, huge party that we had on Saturday. So we're out trying to get him some pants, and I'm in the dressing room. And of course, the one time I forget my phone in the car, my son is calling and calling and blowing up my phone. So I finally figure out how to answer it, with my husband's help, of course, on my watch. And he is panicked, and he says, "Mama, Mitch is sick." And so, "What's going on? What's happening?" He said, "Well, we're in the car, and Mitch, a couple of minutes earlier, just for fun, says, hey, this is goat milk. It's organic. It's really good for you. And this is Yoplait yogurt. And this is just crap. And it's loaded for sugar, loaded with sugar. And as a joke, he hurls the yogurt over his shoulder. And what really crushes me is that this is all on tape. So we, can watch it over and over at the loss of my nephew. And it's devastating to watch this because he thinks that he's doing something incredibly good by drinking this organic goat's milk, and it was kefir, versus this crappy stuff that's made with sugar. And he loved what we do. He wanted to be a functional medicine practitioner like we are, or a naturopath, or even a medical doctor, but with that holistic approach as opposed to the traditional approach. So he guzzles literally this much of the goat milk kefir, throws his coat on, and gets into the car with my son. And all of a sudden his throat starts itching, and my son looks at him, and Gabe says to him, Mitch, that's what happens to me when I have a dairy allergy reaction. My son is actually anaphylactic to dairy, and we knew this. So he had in his pocket Benadryl. My nephew had asthma and some pre-existing autoimmune issues, so he had an inhaler in the car. So immediately my son says to Mitch, you know what? Use your inhaler right away. And then he on the phone with me, I said, Gabe, I'm going to stay on the phone with you. This is what I want you to do. Open that Benadryl, and here's why we have Benadryl for a reason. Open that Benadryl, give it to him, and have him chew it. And by this time, he's about 3 minutes from my nephew's work, which is where they were going. And my husband and I were just getting ready to try to leave. And when Gabe called panicked, we said, you know what, that's it. We hopped in the car, we run. And me, I hate driving fast, but I'm always that person who's like, honey, slow down, slow down. And this time I'm like, honey, put the pedal to the metal. We got to get going. Something's going on. And my nephew he started swelling. His chest was like a balloon. He had a rash from head to toe. He couldn't breathe. And meanwhile, he's still driving. So he gets onto the curb at the little cafe that he worked at. And my son, in the meantime, I had been on the phone with him, and I said, you got to get out and scream, call 911, because I knew this was a medical emergency, and I knew we needed to get him help. And my son didn't know how to get him to the hospital. I didn't think he would make it to the hospital. So as my son gets out of the car and screams, call 911, somebody says, I have an EpiPen, and someone else says, I already called 911. I know Mitch, and I knew something was wrong. So my nephew actually gets out of the car, walks into the cafe, and my son, who when he has an allergic reaction will go get some ice, go get something cool, because at this point I don't think Gabe really realized how severe this was. And so my nephew sat down outside, and 911 was 90 seconds away. My nephew's help was 90 seconds away. He walked up to the fire department, or the firemen. He walked up to the paramedics, and they said to him, look, we're really sorry, but you are having an allergic reaction. We have to intubate you, and we have to intubate you awake. And so Mitch fought a little bit, but he said, I know this is bad. Please get my dad. In the meantime, my brother had been headed out with he was going to see a Padres game with his staff. And he at this point had found out and turned around, got there just in time. And my nephew went down as they intubated him. They put him into the ambulance. He had cardio arrest. He was down for 7 minutes in the ambulance. He had a second cardiac arrest in the emergency room. By then I get there. We're sitting there, and I'm looking and thinking, why are they not cooling him? Why are they not protecting his brain? And they said, well, we did a CT scan. He's got a little bit of swelling on his brain, a little bit of blood on his brain, but this is pretty indicative of an allergic reaction. I said, well, I think it's time to start cooling him. Let's protect him, because we couldn't rise him at that point. He was unconscious. And so they said, no, we're not going to do this. We have to send him back up for another CT scan. We're monitoring him. Let's fast forward 4 hours. They send him back up. And at this point, he had catastrophic swelling and bleeding on his brain. Now, by this point, I was able to talk my brother into air flighting him to a different hospital that specialized in neuro cases. And when we got there, it was the middle of night. And at that point, we pretty much knew that there was going to be no hope. But I don't believe in no hope. I always believe that we can sometimes have miracles. And I thought this would be a miracle for my nephew. And I prayed and prayed, and we did not receive that miracle. The 4 people that received his organs received that miracle, but unfortunately my family and I didn't. And so 5 days after um, keeping him alive, because in California they have very specific laws, we watched him and we stayed with him and we talked to him and we loved on him. But I knew 5 days earlier that we were going to lose him. And so on that 5th day, July 13th of 2022, he donated his organs. And one of the pretty interesting things about that, I don't know if anybody's been through that, but Mitch was always in life larger than life. He helped people, he loved people, he did anything and everything that he could for people. And I do believe today he is a guardian angel up there saving people. But he had the opportunity to really impact people's lives. And I don't think you realize when you're alive how many people you are. But this right here is a beach in California. This was actually my nephew's favorite beach where he used to go surfing. And this was an impromptu gathering that people, I don't know how long they had, maybe an hour to get there, where his teachers at his school, where he had graduated 2 years earlier, had set all of this up and gave everybody an opportunity to speak. You'll see my brother right there. And you can't see me, but the little guy with the red hair is my nephew. He's the one who kept him alive until the paramedics got to him. But all of these people had something amazing to say about how Mitch impacted them, saved their lives. One of them wanted to commit suicide. People just, it's incredible the things that people go through and how many people's lives that you impact. And he really impacted my life. Now, one of the things that I left out, and I think is really important to talk about, and as practitioners, we understand this, but my nephew, 2 days prior to his reaction, gotten a meningitis vaccine. And he had actually gone to his primary care and asked for that vaccine to be so that he didn't have to take the vaccine. And he wanted him to sign the paperwork for him so he would be exempt, because he wanted to go to school like all the other kids in the school. But they said this is required, and all his primary care had to do was sign off on that vaccine, and refused to do it, and then shamed him and talked him into having the vaccine. And the neurosurgeon at Scripps said, you know, I think that that had a lot to do with it. I think it kicked his immune system into high gear. I think he had a sensitivity that we didn't know about. And then it was a perfect storm together. And so, you know, he, we didn't know that. He didn't know. He wasn't strong enough. He was a kid. And so he took the vaccine, and then 2 days later, it was actually 46 hours later, that he had this event that took his life from us. So I really think it's so important to talk about food sensitivities and how they impact our life and how it impacts our gut health. And because a lot of people don't even contribute those things or relate those things to each other, especially the patients that are coming in. They don't realize that, you know, weight gain can be from gut health issues or food sensitivities, that sleep issues can be from that, right? Our body keeps all of our different systems working in harmony with each other so that we can maintain optimal health. And you and I all know that most people aren't even coming in optimally health, right? They come in barely being maintained by that traditional model. But we look for the true underlying causes of the problem so we can fix them, so that we can get them to maintain optimal health. And when we fall out of balance, it leads to a myriad of health challenges. And these are just some of them, right? But weight gain, sleep issues, thyroid issues, blood sugar issues, menopausal issues, andropausal issues, diarrhea, headaches, all of the different things that I talked about earlier. And one of the big ones is leaky gut. And I think, and before I forget, you know, this is Mitch, if you're looking at the screen on the left, and this is my son, Gabe, on the right, and they were best friends. And my son, I've known his whole life that he had allergies, and I've been working on gut health. And really, I was very fortunate that I found KBMO, because I was able to actually test him and figure out what was going on with him, so that I could get him off those foods, so I can work on that gut health and get him as solid as I could get him. So if he did experience a reaction, which he would do, and literally immediately his left eye would swell, his right eye would swell, his throat would get scratchy, his lips would get swollen. So, but we knew what to do. And for him, Benadryl always made a big difference. Unfortunately, it didn't really help my nephew. But I think all of you can probably see why this is so important to me, because I feel like if I had had this information back enough that I could have taught my nephew, this is what we need to do, and we need to have this information, then we would have probably still had him today. And I know that's a leap of faith, but I hope we would have still had him today. But today I spend my time with my patients educating. I test every single one of them for food sensitivities, because how else am I going to help them with their gut, right? And I don't know if you know this, but KBMO has some other tests also. And we also know that leaky gut can promote development of food allergies and can be caused by food allergies. And I think this is so important to remember this. And James hates it when I do this, but I'm going to play a little video of James, because I think all you know how weird it is to watch yourself on video. But this is the gut barrier panel that they so sweetly added to our FIT tests for us, so we could definitively look and see if we have a gut issue like leaky gut. And then we know that we've got to do much more gut repair. So I'm going to play this for you real quick, and it's super quick. So here we go.
Today, I'm excited to tell you about our new leaky gut panel called the Gut Barrier Panel. We heard from providers that some of them didn't run our food sensitivity panel because they thought the patient had leaky gut. So it seemed a bit of a chicken and egg situation. So what we wanted to do was devise a test that would not only measure food sensitivities, but also leaky gut. There was an increased realization of the importance of gut health. 80% of the immune system is in the gut, and the links with healthy brain and healthy gut. So it seemed a great add-on to our existing patented test, a FIT test.
So that's pretty cool. And they just added it right on for us so that we could use it. And it helps us so that we know when they have a food sensitivity, and if we have to heal up that gut even more than we think that we have to heal up that gut. They also have a really cool CIT panel. I know, right? It's very, very creative when we do the FIT and the CIT, but it's a cardiovascular inflammation test. And I use that a lot as well, because we know that inflammation is part of this. I'm going to talk about that here in a second as well. I did want to talk a little bit about some of the success stories. I have personally been able to diagnose people with food allergies and food sensitivities using the KBO Fit 132 and 176. Bill is one of my patients, and he had a gluten allergy. And his story is pretty incredible. He was actually on an airplane, and they could not land the flight because he could not get out of that bathroom because he was having diarrhea. And let me tell you about the looks we got when he finally got out, like he was in the bathroom on purpose, trying to stop them from landing the plane. But he sits down, and all it was a gluten allergy, but none of his traditional doctors ever bothered to test for it. So all I did was that one test. I did a SIBO test, a couple of other ones, figured out what was going on with him, healed him up, and guess what? Today he is doing pretty incredible. I have another patient. Her name is Anne. She came to me after 18 months with her traditional doctor, just giving her, I think she said 16 rounds of antibiotics and a little bit of diflucan, and they kept saying, no, it's not yeast, and they kept giving her more antibiotics, destroying her gut further and further. She walked through the door, she had this crack on her lip, and I looked at her, I said, Anne, that's yeast. And she said, no, it's not. They tested, blah, blah, blah. I said, yes, it is. And so we did a food sensitivity test. Guess what showed up? Yeast in her gut. 3 weeks working with her. Her face is completely clear. Her migraine headaches are gone. She feels like a new woman, and she is so upset that nobody bothered to test 18 months earlier for her. And the last one was Kelly. Kelly tested positive for casein and whey allergies. She was having migraine headaches for, I don't know, 40 years, I think is what she said. She tested positive for leaky gut, which I was able to look at the KBMO 176. We fixed all of that stuff, and guess how long it has been since Kelly has had a migraine headache? I saw her, I don't know, 3 days ago. She said it's been 9 months now since she has had a headache. So that's pretty good. I think it's really important to remember that you are what you eat, right? Nutrition is fundamental in overall health, and knowing what you can and cannot eat is vital to attain and maintain optimal health. And I believe, just from what I've gone through with my family, is that you really are what you eat, right? That's that age-old saying, you are what you eat. And that is absolutely 100% true. So watch out for what you're eating. When I hear some of the symptoms of this food sensitivities and allergies, which I've gone through with a lot of these, I'm going to just touch on them real quick. Fatigue, brain fog, sleep issues, respiratory issues, joint pain, bloating, constipation, diarrhea, migraine headaches. Who does this sound like? This sounds like probably all of the patients that are walking through your door. One of the main things I do is I work on a really good probiotic with them, and I have a women's one that I was able to put together, and it really, really makes a difference for them. And I know that our time is coming close, and James, let me know when I'm up, but the diagnostic approaches that I take in my office with my patients is, first thing, I do a lot of blood testing. I do elimination diets. I do imaging if we need it, endoscopies, colonoscopies if I'm suspecting IBS, IBD, Crohn's, celiac, things like that. I do the gut barrier panel. I will look at leaky gut. I'll look at yeast in the gut. We look at chronic inflammation through C-reactive protein, which I believe is part of that CIT test, which is a much higher and better test than those lipid panels. FYI, lipid panels are old and shouldn't even be used anymore. I also look at secretory IgA with my patients because inflammation and gut health connection is huge. It impacts all the different functions in our body. I also will use aloe, collagen. There's tons of different things that I use when I am looking at their labs and trying to heal up their guts, and quality of your supplements do matter. So when people come in and they say, oh, I just went to so-and-so, such a place, I always tell them, look, we want nutraceutical grade, which is pharmaceutical grade. We want the highest quality so we can get the best results and the best bang for your buck. So what I do is a comprehensive patient history, elimination. Food journals are incredible in helping us figure out, along with that food sensitivity test. Sometimes nutritional coaching and life coaching is really big to help with stress management, sleep and activity levels, the functional lab testing, anti-inflammatory type products, and approaches. Genetics can really play a big part of this stuff, supplementation. Then I individualize my treatment plans because not every plan is for every person. I give them tons of patient education. I monitor them and follow up with them because that's one of the things that is really important, is making sure that you're following up, because you and I both know that they fall off the wagon really easy. Patient education is something that will really set you apart from other practitioners, because functionally and traditionally, both approaches really recognize the importance of understanding and, quote, managing food allergies. I think from a functional standpoint, we try to get rid of them. From a traditional standpoint, they manage them. And so we just differ in our diagnosis, our treatment, our overall emphasis of us trying to find the overall underlying cause of a problem instead of just trying to cover up a symptom with a drug. And don't get me wrong, I really feel blessed that we live in a country that we can get medications when we need it. And I know in my nephew's case, although we couldn't save him, it saved 4 other people's lives because we had the medication that we needed to keep him alive in order to donate. And, I just really feel like had we taken that functional approach earlier on for him, that we could have made a much bigger difference, and that, he could have been here with us today. So I think knowledge is power. Don't ever stop learning. Don't ever stop going on webinars and listening to things and listening to podcasts, because it will really keep you on that cutting edge for your patients and really keep you moving forward. It will keep you able to learn how to give those more personalized assessments and personalized approach to getting people healthier. So like I said before, we really take all of these things, look at these things, and my ultimate goal really is empowering my patients. So how are you going to empower your patients? What are you going to do to really help them? Because you know what? The only insurance that we have really is prevention, and prevention is knowledge, and knowledge is by doing the right test the right way. food sensitivity tests, all of these other tests, so we know what's going on in the body so that we can fix it. So really, it's important also check out their hormones. We got to know what those abnormal reactions are. We need to be able to teach them what that looks like. And that's part of what we're doing, is educating the public on what that looks like and what to do if you see someone having it. There is a huge, huge link between gut health, inflammation, and food sensitivities. And there are many, many diagnostic approaches that you can take to help your patients. And you just have to pick what you think is going to work for you and what you are comfortable doing. So, I just wanted to say one more time, this really is in loving memory of my nephew, Mitch. And, if you think that this isn't going to happen to you, or if you think this isn't going to happen to your patients, you're wrong. I never thought we were going to be part of that family of people that has to now live in the aftermath of what happened. But this can happen to anybody. So, take the time, do the tests, do them the right way so that you can really help your patients heal up their gut and get them so that your family and your patients don't go through what my family and is going through now. So I want to thank you all for your support, and thank you for hopping on with us today, and thank you for thinking about this and really helping with my personal quest to stomp out this totally what I think overlooked epidemic is, which is food sensitivities. So I hope this was informational for you. And if you ever have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to help anybody learn how to do this stuff. And I know James's people are so amazing at helping as well. So thank you.
Dr. Deb, thank you so much for that. I mean, that's a really moving story. And again, a couple of big questions have come up in the chat, and then there's a couple of other things that I've thought about as well as we go through it. I mean, what would you say are the kind of key takeaways for a provider to think, to make sure that this doesn't happen to them? And then I'll go into some more kind of like the nitty gritty of some of the questions that have come in. But
Okay.
what are some of the kind of learnings that if you were, not that you can kind of live life in the rearview mirror, but what are the things that now what that we can try and pass on to the providers now in terms of listening to this?
Yeah, I think some of the keys are really knowledge. Knowledge is power. Understanding not just that you need to do the test, but how to do it and what it means, what that means, so you can have those discussions and those hard discussions with people. Because when your patients are coming through, they don't realize that a food sensitivity or a food allergy can be causing their symptoms. They're just like, oh, I work a lot. Why aren't you sleeping? Oh, I don't know. So I think knowledge is really one of the biggest things. And do it sooner than later. One of the things that I left out of that story was that because my nephew lived across the country, I actually, the morning that he had this reaction, had done a telemed visit with one of my girlfriends who is a functional medicine medical doctor out in California, where he could have gone and done some of the things in her location, which he couldn't fly across the country to do with me. And we didn't do it soon enough. Had we done it earlier, we would have been able probably to have made a difference and quiet down those antibodies, and maybe that reaction would have been quite so catastrophic. I think asking for help from other providers, because we're a team, we're all here to take care of each other, and really asking for help. So if you don't understand something, or if you don't know something, it's about being honest with your patients and telling them, hey, look, what, I just need to look this one up, and go ask your peers. And one of us is going to certainly be able to help you with that. So, no matter what approach you take, I think that is really one of the key things that you need to feel comfortable doing.
I mean that team approach is, I would kind of only kind of totally concur with. And again, we've got Dr. Val on staff, and we're very fortunate. We've got many thousands of providers running it. So again, if people think that it's more of a brain relationship versus a gut relationship versus an immune health issue versus OBGYN, we've got all of them. So again, we've been very fortunate to work with the likes of Dr. Deb, who are thought leaders in their own right in the field. So again, I think that's a great message to kind of pass that on as well. You touched on supplements in terms of being nutraceutical grade, stuff like that. Are there a number of brands that you like? I mean, we've worked with Biotics, Nutridyne, Designs for Health, a number of them. But just out of interest, I think it's always good to hear from peer to peer as getting advice. which ones have you found, been particularly helpful for you?
Yep. So I use all of those, and Nutridyne is particularly easy to work with, and they're wonderful. They can also private label for you. They can also help you formulate. And so they're wonderful to work with. Apex, I have worked with for a long, long time. Standard Process, I have worked with for a long, long time. And you need to know your products and your companies, because those kind of companies, they don't sell on Amazon, which is good, because people, I don't know about you, anything I want to know, I'm like, right onto Amazon. And I guess people are doing that on ChatGPT these days.
Yep.
But, those are the ones that are my typical go-tos. And I know during COVID, when I stopped being able to get the things that I really wanted, I just started formulating my own. And that's pretty fun too. So those are the typical companies that I will work with, and Designs for Health, and yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. When we launched the gut barrier panel, it's the same thing. I mean, I would argue we feel like we're pretty well ensconced with the diagnostic and obviously lab testing, but weren't really familiar with, we're obviously been aware of some of the better professional brands that you kind of alluded to there. So again, that's been one of the nice things as part of adding that gut barrier panel, is some of those protocols from the likes of Nutridyne, Biotics, and those people. So again, we've got those on offer, and they're on the website, which I think are helpful for providers. And we've now partnered with FullScript as well to try and make that as straightforward for providers as well.
Yeah. And the other thing I found with these companies too, when they're really good companies, they actually have doctors that you can call or schedule an appointment with and say, hey, I have this patient. What do you think I should do? And they're really good about helping as well.
Yeah, no, that's good. It was fascinating to see the three examples you gave. One was migraines, and we've seen that a lot. It's amazing for me, that, and the skin, and then the IBS. The migraines, I'll just kind of catch up. We often hear this where patients have gone decades, like in your example, and people just have never tested them to see, what is causing that inflammatory response. So it's enlightening and great to hear that story, but slightly depressing at the same time that, these poor patients are going for decades. Not, the 18 months was, I almost felt like that was a win for that lady who'd only gone 18 months. But, the never underestimate the link with the diet and kind of brain related issues. And it kind of takes us back to the study we did probably 10 years ago. And we saw migraines, depression, anxiety as the lead issues. And we were like, well, we better be careful here. We're just a little food sensitivity company. We don't want to stick our head above the parapet. Now, 10 years down the line, we've been fortunate that we've got neurologists running the test, saying, look, James, it's not the brain, it's not the gut to brain, it's the brain to gut. And so I think it's fascinating to see, that you're seeing that in your practice. And I think most of your fellow providers will probably have similar stories. But is that one of the main areas that you found useful? I mean, the skin and IBS are obviously a couple of others, but where would you say in the kind of the top two or three of symptoms that you found you've had the best results?
I think weight gain, puffiness, migraine headaches. And this is actually really a good point, because as a chiropractor, people come in with these headaches and these migraine headaches, and I think it's really frustrating when you work on them for months and they still can't get rid of them. They might be a little bit better, but they can't get rid of them. And then we forget, oh my gosh, there's other things like hormone imbalance and food sensitivities. So then I go, well, wait a minute, let's test your hormones and test your food sensitivities. And boom, it shows up. We handle those. And guess what? Then their chiropractic adjustments and their massages and their acupuncture actually starts to help, and they can go longer between visits, and they just feel better energy, better rested. They sleep better when they are off of the foods that they are sensitive to. So, that's a great way to implement this into a practice, whether it's, a chiropractic practice, a massage practice, whatever it is, acupuncture practice, just going in and saying, okay, well, wait a minute, I know this is really important, but there's other things that we can be doing to help our patients, and doing these tests. And they're relatively inexpensive. And most patients, when you say to them, hey, look, I know your insurance is not going to pay for this, because they don't care. They just want to put you on a prescription or do a procedure on you. They don't make money off this. What we want to do is get you better, and you're doctor is just afraid to say to you, hey, this is going to cost you, I don't know, $400. And probably you're just going to go ahead and do it. The patients almost always are like, yeah, I just want to do that. No problem. And I asked them, just for my own reference, hey, if your medical doctor said, hey, I want to check for this food sensitivity and it's going to be out of pocket, are you okay with that? 99% of them say yes. So educating.
Yeah. And I think you make a good point there, because occasionally I'll hear, oh, well, it's really expensive for my patients. I would always say most patients, by the time they get to see any of our wonderful providers who are, your doctor number 7 or 8, they're in a point that, they're really hanging on your every word, don't necessarily prejudge where they should be spending their disposable income. I would argue strongly that if that's your recommendation, I'm with you, Dr. Deb. I often hear 9 out of 10 times patients will go with them. But equally, that's one of the reasons we have the 3 different value propositions. We've got the fit 176, the 132, and then the 22. I mean, I wouldn't recommend the 22 just straight off the bat. But again, if budget is ever the issue, then that was one of our thoughts behind in terms of kind of coming up with those 3 panels. And then, interestingly enough, when you mentioned the IBS, we did a clinical study in that area, and it was fascinating to see, as you mentioned, in terms of the overlap with the CIT testing. We measured high sensitive CRP, which is on there, and homocysteine levels, and we saw those come down precipitously versus the symptoms that the patients were presenting with. So you didn't mention IBS particularly, but I'm sure the gentleman who was stuck in the bathroom on the plane, high likelihood that that's probably what he had. So, it's fascinating to me to see that, Venn diagram of cardiovascular health and IBS being really very much alive and well.
Absolutely.
So, and again, the nice thing with that CIT test, as you kind of mentioned, it's got a number of the key markers. It's definitely, a step up from the lipid panel. But when someone mentioned to me the lipid panel, 50% of patients who have heart attacks, they have the lipid panel is normal on the day of that heart attack. I mean, it's kind of stunning to me that that is standard of care. So, which I guess we should use that phrase kind of with a pinch of salt. But it's interesting to see that.
Yeah, I feel like as functional practitioners or functional medicine or holistic or whatever you want to call yourself, because I mean, people, right? We shouldn't just be standard of care. We should be way higher than standard of care. And like you referenced earlier, most people, by the time they get to us and are talking to us, they're at the end of their rope. Some of them even have come right out of the hospital, to come see us because they're getting let down by that conventional approach, and or it saves their life, but then now what? So we are that now what, and we need to be way up here, and we need to help those people, because otherwise they're going to end right back up where they were in that hospital, if not worse.
Yeah, and I think to that point about information is power. I think if you can test these guys up front, then you're getting so much more information. You can be so much more valuable to them than having to kind of don't test and guess approach. And I know with your FMU background, that's a very strong proponent of what they teach as well. So it's fascinating to see how these things that it's very devastating to hear that through Mitch's story how some of these things could come around. But it's I think it's a real wake up call for all of us, even as you say at this functional medicine end of the game, where we are proactive in terms of how we look at things and have the best tests available. And so I think thank you very much indeed for sharing that story. I mean, I think it's very thought provoking, and hopefully we'll all be able to take something away from this. And thank you very much indeed for your time and highlighting through a tragic story, but as you say, I think amazing that the strength that you look at the positive and the 4 people he saved, which is again a remarkable thing for anyone of any age to say that I saved 4 people. And so at the tender age of 20 to say I've saved 4 people, that's an amazing legacy for anyone to leave.
I would say for him too, I mean, he had more than 500 people at his funeral at 20 years old. And the hospital, because it was during COVID, all his friends wanted to come in and they kept saying no. And the doctor went out into this courtyard to tell the people no. And she looked at the sea of people there to see him, and they said, you know what, we're going to figure out how to make it happen. And they literally rolled him in a bed with everything hooked up across the entire hospital into this gorgeous courtyard where everybody was able to go and say hello and say goodbye and say their piece, and then tell us their personal stories. And the stories of this young man and the short 20 years that he had on this earth were pretty unbelievable. And so, you know, we feel pretty blessed to be able to have that in the wake of such a huge loss for our family.
I'm sure. Well, and as I say, yeah, amazing story, and he would be thrilled from wherever he's looking down on you at, and to see his aunt, you know, speaking so eloquently about it as well. So, thank you very much, Dr. Deb. For everyone else, this will be recorded, or has been recorded rather. So we'll share this wonderful story and some of the amazing stories that Dr. Deb has in terms of how to treat your patients, how she's integrated the testing as well. So thank you all very much indeed for listening. And again, thank you, Dr. Deb, and Mitch, thank you as well for this amazing story that that your aunt has so eloquently laid out today.
Thank you.